to invite you to two more little things that you can do. First of all, I want you to look at these two, and you might have heard of them before. They're doing a concert in just a little bit. A week from Friday, and they would love for you to be there, and you will love being there. And so if you would like to do that, look for the information in your bulletin, buy those tickets, and come and hear them sing. Second of all,
it's about the blues.
It's about the blues. Very good.
And the women that formed it.
All right, that's great. So if you'd like to be there, look for the information, and you can buy tickets at the kiosk, or that they'll be on sale that day as well. Second of all, there are some flyers out on the table in the gathering area about tomorrow. Tomorrow is the 5th anniversary of the January 8th shootings here. 7th anniversary, sorry, of those shootings. And so they will be meeting at El Presidio Park at 9:30. And if you'd like to be there, we'd love to have you be part of that. At 10:30, we're going to be reading this piece, and I wanted to read just a piece of it for you. This comes from Anne Weems. It says, "Into the wild and painful cold of the starless winter night came the refugees, slowly making their way to the border. The man, stooped with age or anxiety, hurried his family through the wind. Bearded and dark, his skin rough and cracked from the cold, his frame looming large in spite of the slumped shoulders. He looked like a man who could take care of whatever came at them through the dark. Unless, of course, there were too many of them. One man he could handle, two even, but a border patrol, they wouldn't have a chance. Even the stars had been unkind, had hidden themselves in the ink of the night so that the man could not read their way. What kind of cruel judgment would it be to wander in circles through the dark? Or to safely make their way to the border only to find the authorities waiting for them?" He glanced at the young woman, his bride, no more than a child herself. Oh, how the homelessness had taken its toll on her. She'd hardly had time to recover from childbirth when word had come that they were hunted. And they fled with only a little bread and the remaining wine and a very small portion of cheese. Suddenly the child began to make small noises. The man drew in his breath. The woman quietly put the child to rest. Fear. Long, dread-filled moments huddled the family, stood still in the long silence. At last, the man breathed deeply again, reassured that they had not been seen, not been heard. And into the night continued Joseph, Mary, and the babe. That story of that refugee family, of those people fleeing, is a story that I think we felt this last year as we've tried to flee from things that we didn't understand, that we didn't want to understand, that we didn't know how to understand. And it's more than just the journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem and then on to Egypt. It's the story of how we try to sometimes, at the end of one journey, stop and say, just let me catch my breath. But life doesn't quite stop, does it? It keeps saying, got another journey for you. Another way to walk. Just like the journey of pregnancy doesn't continue after birth, but it does change, doesn't it? And sometimes what you learn in the journey of pregnancy gets in the way of that longer journey called parenthood. And you have to switch from the one journey to the next journey. And you have to say, what do I do now? And there's always two ways to face any call to a journey. When a King Herod seems to be after you, that mighty power comes saying, I have all the power and you have none, and I have ill intents towards you, the first reaction is to flee from that power, isn't it? To run away. Find any refuge you can because of the loss that it imparts to us, the fear it instills in us, and the struggle that it imposes on us. We want to run. It's an appropriate response, and one that's answered wonderfully by the Kenyan-born Somali poet Orshan Shire, when she writes, "No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark." You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well, your neighbors running faster than you, breath bloody in their throats. The boy you went to school with who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory is holding a gun bigger than his body. No one leaves home unless home chases you, fire underfoot, hot blood in your belly. No one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one spends days and nights in the stomach of a truck feeding on newspaper unless the miles traveled means something more than journey. No one chooses refugee camps or strip searches where your body is left aching, or prison, because prison is safer than a city of fire. I want to go home, but home is the mouth of a shark. Home is the barrel of a gun, and no one would leave home unless home chased you to the shore. No one leaves home until home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave. Run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know that anywhere is safer than me. We have learned in the last year to flee from. And we've done a lot of running this last year. And we've forgotten, I think, sometimes that we have a second option. Because it wasn't Herod that moved that holy family, Mary, Joseph, and the babe. It was an angel that said, go toward something. Prepositions matter. Now, I'm not an English teacher, but I'm going to teach you about English. We sometimes overlook little words in our language. And we flee. And sometimes we're busy fleeing from when we should be fleeing toward. We're busy hearing the voice of King Herod yelling at us instead of the voice of God leading us. Are we going toward something, or are we running away from something? Are we moving toward what can be, what should be? Are we moving toward what God is inspiring in us? Not in spite of the situation, but in the situation. Are we moving toward what we ought to become? See, the Holy Spirit, that thing which we say is God present within each one of us, always draws us toward something. And every single moment, no matter how wrong it feels, is a moment for that Spirit to lead once again. Who has ever been given a moment that you didn't quite want? That you didn't quite expect, that you wish hadn't been given to you. And as you looked forward, you could not see any reason why you wanted to step that way. And yet there was the moment. My friend Carol is a lady who has gone to Peru with me more times than I can count. She's an amazing woman. And she posted on her Facebook page this: if, as Herod, we fill our life with things and again with things, if we consider ourselves so unimportant that we fill every moment of our lives with action, when will we have the time to make the long, slow journey across the desert as did the Magi? Or sit and watch the stars as did the shepherds? Or brood over the coming of the child as did Mary? For each one of us, there is a desert to travel, a star to discover, and a being within ourselves to bring to life. And sometimes we're so busy seeing that desert between Bethlehem and Egypt and the scariness of that desert that we forget to look and see the star which is guiding us. That inborn star, both within us and around us, that pulls us somewhere beyond this moment. Grace has been facing that as Mark's been in the hospital. That hospital room causes you to think so much about the medical stuff, right? That it's hard to see what next, how next, what can emerge out of this. And yet, isn't that the question we have to ask on a regular basis? Not what are we in the middle of, but what can be out of this? And we're afraid of that because sometimes that call into that moment is scary. That step seems like, I don't know where it leads to. I can't see much more than a step or two, and I don't want to go that way. And so we freeze, or we fight that movement. I'm going to show you a picture in a second, but we describe it first. These are a bunch of people who, very much like the refuge where we're going to go, don't have a lot. And their space was invaded. But they chose to come together. Look at this picture. How many might have stayed home that day from church? How many might have said, no, might be a better time not to come together, to move into? And yet there they are, prepared to see that in that moment of too much water or too little water, that God was still going to be present. And that there was something that was going to happen in that community. And too often we don't see what can happen. We don't hear that Star Wars can pray for us. Do we, Mary? We forget that in every single moment of our life and in every single voice, there is something that can shine forth to draw us beyond this. I saw a wonderful quote this week. It said, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. And how many of you are really busy trying to figure out the whole staircase before you move forward? And really want to know the whole path, and sometimes you don't get to. You have to hear that angel voice calling to you to flee toward whatever it is that God is calling us toward. We think we have to understand everything, but what we really have to do is trust. Trust in that voice which calls us and in the companions that go with us on that journey. Because you see, we're all in this together. We oftentimes forget that in the midst of whatever comes up, whatever it is that's afflicting us, whatever is too much, we forget that we have companions on the journey. See, Jesus couldn't have made that journey by himself, could he? Luckily, he had a mother and a father who helped him across there, through that desert, toward that land that he didn't even know he didn't know. And sometimes we are the baby in arms needing to be carried through that wilderness. Other times, we're that loving, caring mother who holds that baby, or that guiding, empowering father who calls that baby forward. Whoever we are, we need to, in that moment, play that role well, knowing that some other moment we may be the other. Because it's never one of us that achieves victory. It is all of us who get there. I saw an amazing float this week in the Rose Bowl parade. It was a Sikh float. You know, those Sikhs who come from that region which is sometimes filled with people that we love to hate in America. And it said on the side of their float, this was the Sikh community of Southern California, it said on the side of their float, victory through charity. Not the charity of just giving to someone, but the larger word charity, that means love and relationship. We have victory because we choose to see that that person to whom we are reaching out, or who is reaching out towards us, is somehow part of us. That we have relationship with them, not just giving to them, but living with them. But to do that, we have to stand up with courage and with vision. And we have to recognize how to flee toward, not just flee away from something. One of my favorite cartoons this time of year, the little cartoon of two people. And one guy said, they asked the other, what do you think will come in this new year? And the other one answers, I think this year will bring flowers. And he says, well, why do you think that? He says, because I'm planting flowers. We have to learn how to plant that which needs to come. And if we're so busy running from, guess what we don't take time to do? We don't take time to plant and nurture and let grow that which needs to happen. That which has been taken away from us, that which we're running away from, is not unimportant, but that to which we're going is more important. Amy McGrath is running for Congress in Kentucky. When she was a young lady, at 12, she knew what she wanted to do with her life. She wanted to be a fighter pilot. So she went to, as she got time to be able to go to the Naval Academy, she went to her congressman, a man you might have heard of, Mitch McConnell, who looked at her and said, women can't do that. She found other ways. She went to the Naval Academy, and now she's running against one of McConnell's hand-picked successors to Congress. She's standing up, and at the end of her political ad, which just came out this week, you should look at the whole thing, it's great. She said, some are telling me we can't take back our country for my kids and for yours. We'll see about that. Isn't that a great line? We'll see about that. She has a vision of what can be. She has a vision of fleeing towards something, not just away from something. Tuesday of this week, I woke up with a quote in my mind. I have no clue where it came from, but I just love it. It says this, her strength shall be made of spikes and humor and consistency. And that's what we have to do. We have to have spikes and humor and consistency. And we have to see where it is that God is moving. This week I've been busy meeting with different groups, all different sorts, meeting with people. And what I've been learning this week is what I already knew, but what I need to be reminded of. There's a lot more people that are making this journey than what we realize. I sat with people from PCIC and our JFON group. JFON, for example, is having their first clinic this Saturday. And just all different types of groups. And what I heard is that I have companions on this journey. I have people that are moving and trying to help us. The mayor told us, look, here's a list of people that are also concerned with things like you guys are, J. Fund. Let's make those connections. Let's find out who it is that is in this together with us, and let's move in that direction. In Illinois, a judge ruled just this week against a bunch of parents who wanted to exclude people from bathrooms. Right? Transgender people, they said, shouldn't belong. This judge said, yeah, they do. That judge is on this path with us. Who else is drawing us together? Who's going to make this journey with you? 10.5 years ago, I was called to a church called Epworth Church in the west side of Phoenix. I went there and I met a good friend. His name was also Jim. Jim was my music person. He was marvelous. He played the piano. He led the choir. He did so much that just inspired and moved me. Because he had a lot of skills. He was a seminary-trained man who had been an ordained minister in the Southern Baptist Church. A position he could not hold when they found out that his husband, Jeff, and he were married. And so he found himself in a Methodist church that couldn't allow him to be ordained because of our polity, but I could allow him to be everything that he could be. And so he sometimes preached for us. He definitely led our services, and he became as much as I could, but that journey meant that I had to leave him 3 years later, not knowing where it would go. As soon as you guys let go of me here today, I'm fleeing from here and going towards Phoenix, where I will be sitting with Jim Alexander and with his husband Jeff, as Jim is ordained to the United Church of Christ. What is it that God is calling out of you? What can you be? Don't just run away. Run towards. Become something in this moment. Find the people around you that will help you. Become something that changes this world into what God wants it to be. Amen? Amen. We just need strength for the journey. That's what this is about. One thing I love about this communion is that person who may be completely opposite to you, completely on another side, guess what? They need to sit at a table today and partake of a similar meal like this and say that God is with them. And they're right. That person who right now doesn't know you, but who has very similar aims as you, guess what? They might sit at a table today and hear these words that say, in this bread, God is with you. In this juice, God walks with you. And they're right. Know that as this communion draws us all together, so does that Spirit of God, drawing us towards something as you partake of this. As you take that bit of bread and that little drop of juice, also feel that presence which calls you toward something. This gift is for all of us and reminds us of the truth that God is with us all. Will my servers please come forward?